What is a men's rights activist? This is not a question that's ever been asked until very recently. And normally I would give you my very simple answer, but today I have the best person in the world to answer this question because he is the most prominent men's rights activist in America. He has been recently featured in a documentary called The Red Pill that was created and directed by a female feminist who has stopped being a feminist after making this movie. His name is Paul Elam, and yes, Elam is male, spelled backwards, and it is his real last name. All right, Paul, now let me ask you a question that you've probably been asked a million times before, maybe not always in a friendly way, but what the hell is men's rights activist? Because we've always been told that it's the women whose rights we should fight for. And we've been told this pretty much since at least my birth, and it's been a while. So what is a men's rights activist?
Well, pretty literally, it is one who advocates for the rights of men. I mean, I hate to say something so, it sounds like I'm returning your question with a too simple an answer, but fundamentally, or ostensibly, that's what it is. The thing is, though, this is what I've been advocating for a long time, is about 98, 99%, I would guess, of men's issues, men's rights issues, are solved and prevented around their decisions with women. So in that respect, I think that men's rights activists is the biggest misnomer that's ever occurred on the internet. We have people identifying as men's rights activists, yet they aren't engaged in anything political. What they're doing is talking about the lives of men, what happens to men, most importantly in relationships, in marriage, what goes on legally for them. And the idea is to get men to refrain from putting their necks on the chopping block unnecessarily, which is what most men do.
So are we talking about legal rights, or are we talking about what I would call cultural rights? Like, it is illegal for me to say a lot of things that I say on my channel and you say on your channel, but if a regular Joe Schmo comes to the office and says anything like what we say on our channels at a little, water cooler, he will be fired immediately, right? So, and that's what I call the cultural rights. Are we talking about both, and why?
Well, I mean, I think men have to proceed with caution. If you do get too honest in a workplace, particularly about sexual politics, you will be gone. In recognizing that, I think it's just good, sensible advice to give to men to keep this stuff out of their workplace. You can avoid that with that. And now somebody can say, well, oh my God, I'm having to stifle myself. This is a violation of my free speech. Look, you don't have free speech is an illusion for the most part. If you express unpopular ideas in a group of people, they will turn on you every time. And it doesn't matter if it's the workplace. It doesn't matter if it is a social group or a club or some sort of group activity. If you go against the flow there openly, and this is why I tell men to be red pill, to not talk red pill so much, but just be red pill, because that's protective. But when you start talking about this topic in a group of people that are averse to it, they will turn on you. You have to accept that.
But I'm not just talking about, outrageous things. I'm talking about things that a female coworker of mine would be able to say. And if I would literally identically say the same thing, except for, having a penis, then all of a sudden I'm in trouble. Do you agree that that is part of the men's rights issues that we're having and have been having for a while?
I agree it's part of the problem. But again, trying to change that is like trying to change human nature. How do we go about telling every workplace that you need to allow men to talk about, the pitfalls of being around women and the danger that they now represent to men in society, which in the Western world they do. Talking about that is forbidden. So yeah, that's a rights issue. The question is, how do you want to fight that? Do you want to fight that by giving up your job, by starting a crusade in which you'll be crushed? Or do you want to move on? I, for instance, handled this by being my own company. I'm an entrepreneur. I do my own thing in life. So I can do this interview and talk about whatever, and I don't have to worry about repercussions. But if you're going to go into a workplace and say things that are going to offend 98% of the people there, it doesn't matter at that point if it's fair or if it's right. It is the way it is. And the red pill, first and foremost, is a reality pill.
Now, what if we got back to like talking about legal men's rights? Because last week I was making a video titled Five Anti-Men Laws in America. And about 15 minutes into my research, I had to change the title. It became 10 anti-men laws in America, and I was just scratching the surface. And as I was doing this research, I realized that, some of these laws maybe were actually originally served some good purpose, especially, past 20, 30, 40 years ago, with majority of men voting for it, in various local and federal congresses. But now things have just turned and these laws just became anti-men. Would you agree with that?
Well, you'd have to tell me the laws you're specifically referring to,
Alimony,
because
for example, and
um, yeah, again, in a perfect world, alimony, when a woman has forsaken any professional path and has given up that in order to take care of a family, and then if you have a bad husband and it doesn't work out, and because of him, then yeah, alimony seems like a reasonable idea for at least for a short period of time until that woman can transition her life back to making an income or doing whatever she wants. But it's been treated as a racket since its inception. There were articles in the 1920s in America about what was commonly called the alimony racket. And that was young women marrying one guy after another and rolling up. And there were women that married 10, 12, 15 guys and were collecting money from all of them. This has always been the case. So, yeah,
well, then
you go ahead.
Based on your answer, I'm going to harshen up my next question because I was going to give men some credit. And, kind of because as my research went on, I was like, all right, I guess men didn't see this coming. They were trying to take care. But it seems that I should ask a question, not when all these things kind of turned on us, but why the fuck did we, as men, allowed for these laws that essentially most of us had to vote for, and most of the male representatives in governing bodies had to vote for? How did we allow all of this? Because without men willfully agreeing to this, we would have none of this.
That is the best possible question you could ask, in my opinion. And the answer is relatively simple, even if it takes some time to understand it. Men in the West, in particular, and well, I think we have to differentiate. We're not talking about Eastern culture here for the most part, although they have their own problems. But men in the West are steeped in a romantic tradition. And I think we terribly underestimate how powerful that model is in the minds of Western men, in us seeing ourselves on horseback, defending the maid, and rescuing the poor, trapped, abused woman. That's our identity. We're dragon slayers on behalf of women. We've been raised in that. And we've been raised with the notion that men lower themselves for women. We get on our knees to propose to them. We bear jewels, trying to entice them into a nice, easy, cushy life. Let us take care of you. Well, when your attitude toward women is that you're ready to drop to your knees and offer up 3-4 months of your salary in order to entice her to love you, and I put that word in scare quotes, then you end up with men doing this throughout our governance, throughout our institutions of higher education, through all our institutions, you have basically romantic men trying to prove that they're good protectors and providers for women. And they turn on each other in that context. Men throw each other under the bus all the time in order to please women. And that is the fundamental core problem. Until men face that demon within themselves and realize their own worth and that women are not worth more than they are, then they'll continue to do this, and they'll continue to pass crazy laws like lifetime alimony in some places, which is quite literally insane. But you'll see men standing up proudly to defend that because it means taking care of women.
Yeah, no, I always explain this to, I feel that, I've never been married on purpose, but I feel like alimony, making a man paying alimony to a woman, it's the same thing as having a woman give this guy blowjobs after he divorces her. It's literally exactly, well, I would even say exactly, that's still not really fair, to be honest with you. But okay, but
I think it is fair. It is a plundering of a man's personal assets, the things that he's worked for his whole life, the things that he's trained for. I think it's perfectly appropriate. And it's why there's an expression in my community called divorce rape, because that is the way it's interpreted.
I meant
you force a man into slave labor in order
absolutely.
to fundamentally subsidize a woman's life after the relationship is over. That is a kind of rape.
Yeah,
And this is why I tell men, your decision, don't legally marry in the West. It is a horrible mistake that most often will cost you dearly before it's over.
I meant it was unfair to the man, even if the girl was providing blowjobs. But
okay.
yeah. Sorry, no.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. But I do think I thought of even a better question, because I think this is the ultimate question of why, you've been doing what you've been doing, and I've, given up my professional life to start this channel. Is okay. How do we fix this? How do we go about essentially changing the laws of alimony, child support? I can go on and on and on. You know the list better than me by far. How do we go about it? And is it possible?
You starve the institution. If men refuse to marry enough, they'll change the law. It's as simple as that.
Well,
I mean, one of the things I try to impart to men is that there's never going to be a men's rights parade in Washington, D.C. There's never going to be a victory day. There's never going to be a day when we turn over all these unfair, and you're right, they're unfair, unjust laws that financially rape men, that throw them in jail on accusations, that rip them away from their children, just based on an accusation that's lodged in a divorce complaint. And these restraining orders are issued with no proof, no corroboration. You've checked into this. You know what happens in these family courts. We can protest. We can write our congressmen by the thousands. It'll never change as long as men are willing to get married.
But I also, there's, as far as I'm concerned, there are many other laws outside of marriage that are unfair to men. For example, even, guy goes to a college party, meets a girl, takes her home. She says yes, no problem. Next day, he's arrested for rape because he wasn't able to determine with a legal, be his own attorney that if a person who he's never met and ever seen sober really was intoxicated beyond the legal abilities and all that stuff, and all of a sudden he's a rapist. Now that has nothing to do with marriage. That has something to do with a shitty law that has to change. So. And we can, of course, go on and on.
We have the laws, though. We do have what's called due process, but we just forget about it when it comes to these cases. There is no real due process with this stuff. So again, what I say to this is if you're in an environment where you're in college and going home with that girl that's been drinking or taking her back to your dorm or going to hers, you do this at your own risk. because guess what? The laws are not going to change. They're not going to, it is too gynocentric. Again, we go back to this romantic model where everybody making laws, passing laws, interpreting laws, writing laws is doing this on some level subconsciously in the romantic model. And so they just suspend due process. So what law would we change to correct that?
Well, we'll repeal. I think it's not so much, changing the
Okay,
laws.
but
These
which
laws need
law?
to be repealed.
All right, which law?
Well, we can start with alimony laws. We can talk about not passing every year budget bills that, contribute money only to women for college attendance, which they don't need. They now have that's more than 60%.
And what
For
happens to the politician? What happens to the politician in America or somewhere else in the West that says we need to change these laws so that women don't get this money and we need to quit funding feminist projects? What happens to the politician that says that?
what
In other words, at least if your name is not Javier Milei, uh, he could say that in his culture and in his circumstances. But in the United States, what would happen to any politician that advocated for these legal changes?
well,
They'd be destroyed immediately.
unless we demand it as part of the platform, no matter which candidate we're, voting for.
But who is we?
Men.
Who's and how powerful? I mean, can you the stuff you're talking about, just so you know, maybe 1 or 2% of men even have their minds open to this. This is a kind of an elite club of guys who have the stoicism and the mental acuity to look through all the BS and to see what's happening at the core. That is a very small percentage of the men. Most men, 98, 99% of them, are lining up to get on their knees for women. And that isn't changing right now.
I'm hoping that with a small contribution of my channel, I could change, because from what I am hearing from you is the step number one is to get a better PR machine, to get this message in a better way to more men, to wake them up first before we can ask them to actually take actions. And, I don't know, maybe I'm naive. Maybe I know I'm a newbie here and you kind of, breaking my heart here, but I kind of thought that we can do it.
Well, and I think at some point we can, but this is 100-year project. If you look comparatively, women had Seneca Falls, I think it was 1848, 1850, something like that, was their first feminist convention. It was 70 years after that before women could vote. And it was another 50 to 60 years after women got the vote that gender feminism raised its head and they started really profiting from this. That's well over 100 years of time, 120, 130 years of time before even feminism, with all the romantic inclinations we have and all the tendency that we have as human beings to protect women, it still took all that time for that kind of social movement to change. With men, my prediction is it's going to take even longer. I think it will eventually happen. At some point, we'll wake up. But we've only been having this discussion in a robust way for about 20 years now, 30 years maybe. So you will be gone. I will be gone before this really fundamentally. This is my opinion. I could be wrong. And look, I'll get behind a guy like you to change my mind all the time, because this discussion, this is part of that process. This is part of waking men up to what's actually happening. If we could convince young men just of the innate risks of legal marriage across the board, it would move things in the correct direction. But I got to tell you, I'm not hopeful at any time soon that suddenly men are going to catch on and they're going to start standing up to women and telling them no, because that's what you're talking about fundamentally. We change these laws, all this stuff. The core of that action is men standing up to women and saying no. No more, no more, no more feminist money, none of this stuff, no more lifetime alimony, no more $50,000 a month of child support just because I make good money. All these things, yes, they need to change, and I'm hoping that men will stand up. But I think the first place we have to reach them is young men and help them understand that there's a one chance out of two that that woman you marry will destroy your life. And there's one chance out of two that if you have children with her, she will end up making them hate your guts. Because this is what happens.
It has been an honor having Paul on this channel. As a matter of fact, our conversation continued into two more topics, and I will upload those two videos separately on my channel. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to his channel, or you can go to paulelam.com and get links to all of his social media. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, as Paul said, there's a possibility that men's rights will never be equal in our lifetime in America, in other Western countries. However, if you just refuse to be a second-class citizen in America, and how I felt for many years, you can do what I have done and many other men have, which is ditch America, ditch the Western country, ditch the lack of rights that you have, and move to another country that will suit you better. I did it originally because I wanted to date traditional women again, and they kind of ran out of them in America. And anybody who wants to do the same, I would encourage you to move to another country. And if you're seriously considering this, which I think you should, go to themillionmanproject.com, where I have outlined every single step of the way that you need to take, plan, choose the right country for you, and get to the country where not only you will have access to wonderful traditional feminine women, but also you will feel respect for men once again. If you are a single man in America, what choices do you really have if you want to be in a long-term serious relationship? Well, normally I would answer this question myself. However, today I have a very special guest because he is the most prominent men's rights activist in America, Paul Elam. Let's talk about dating. Let's talk about dating in America, which, you know, I think we can agree, what's the professional term for it? Sucks. So now, not, as a matter of fact, there are very few men who can be as lucky as I was to be able to just get up and say, you can keep your modern independent women and your Beyoncés, and I'm out of here. I'm going to go to the country where, you know, men are still respected for what they do in a society. There are gender roles. There are, you know, traditional family values, and women who actually do want to get married and marry a good man. You know, and I'm lucky that I was able to do that. And I will help every single man that I can to do the same. But majority of men in America, at least currently, are not able to do that. So for those men who, American men who want to have a love story and marry a good traditional girl, or maybe even just even have a regular good sex life, you know, for the rest of their life. What are the choices right now, in your opinion?
Limited, very limited. What I would say, if I were advising young men, and I do all the time, is that if you're not ready to relocate, get ready. Make that the focus of your life, rather than the focus of your life being about dating and can I, in the midst of this ocean of garbage, can I find somebody decent in the middle of all this? You know, I talk to men for a living, and I can tell you over and over and over again, the dating apps are not a good option for men. They're terrible. And the women that are available in this pool are terrible. So for me, the correct attitude is, okay, or you look at Alex, look at what you did. You made it. You got out.
Okay,
you ended up in a better culture. Why not focus our lives on that rather than how do I turn a turd into a rose?
wow. So you're actually agreeing with me that, I mean, in my opinion, there are only three choices and only one of them is acceptable. One is to simp, you know. Number two is just to completely stop dating women. Maybe, you know, some professionals to take care of your most important need. And number three, and that's the one that I think that's the only possible choice, is to move. Are you essentially saying that it really is correct? I'm not just some weirdo who just
You're
decided.
bang on the money. Those are the options. Simping is the most common option, and it's the one where guys end up coming to me in their 40s with their lives in a wreck, trying to put the pieces back together. Sorry, but it's just that real. Or you can be totally alone. But guess what? Human beings are not wired to fly solo in life. We're just not. I mean, we are a pair bonding species, whether anybody likes it or not. Now, and I will hand it to some guys. Some guys can cut out women and go into monk mode, and they're perfectly happy. I would never take that away from them. But that's not going to work for most guys. There's going to be a big empty hole in their lives, and they're not going to like that. So, absolutely, passport, man. Get that passport. Gear your life toward being able to be a digital nomad and work around the world anywhere. Do whatever you can. But if you want this to change, one, you're not going to change the West right now. It sucks, and there's nothing you can do about it. Two, if you're happy in monk mode, go for it. It's a lot cheaper. But if you're not, if what you want is some semblance of a traditional relationship, you have to get yourself to a culture where that's still part of the plan for them. And that's not part of the plan in the West. Part
Now,
of the plan is your money for life.
yeah. Um, okay. I thought you would put up much bigger fight than this, but I'm glad we're on the same page. Let me ask you this question that I think you may, I, you know, with all due respect, you may not even know about, but what I've observed here, that a lot of men come here and bring themselves with them, right? So if you think this men who are walking around with Thai women here in Thailand or in Philippines, or I was just in Indonesia, if you think they're having any better relationships than they did in America, you would be wrong most of the time, because when they come here, they end up simping. They end up dating women who are very quickly realize that and take advantage of that. In their relationships, exactly the same, because these women are not dumb. Okay, you don't even have to be that smart to take money away from simps. So these women are very much equipped to do that, and I see that all the time. So with that in mind, as we both recommend, for men to get up and move, what are the self-improvements, if any, do you think this man need to do before they come here and experience exactly the same, unfortunate fate?
Very, very good question. You're asking great questions. And you're right. And I've heard this from other men. We have guys in XY Crew that live in Thailand and the Philippines. And one Australian gentleman I know has been in the Philippines for about 20 years. And he talks all the time about these blue pill, regular normie kind of guys that come over there, and those women chew them up and spit them out so fast it makes your head spin. And it's because what you said is true. No matter where you go, there you are. You always bring yourself with you. And if you're simping, again, this goes back to the romantic model. I would rather than say simping, I would say guys that are romantic, because that is simping. And the self-improvement I suggest before men ever go somewhere and take on these transactional relationships, which when you go to the East, many of these are cultures where there's plenty of transactional relationships. Everybody knows it and they're okay with it. But you have to go there without the romantic ethos. If you're going to the East, to the Thailand or the Philippines with the idea of getting on your knees to propose to somebody, you're missing the point, and you will end up sorry there too.
I do have to say that some of the romantic gestures here are actually would I would not and gentlemanly gestures would not be considered simping, at least in some of these cultures, definitely in Thai culture, simply because how well the gender roles are defined here. Meaning, if both men and women don't cross those lines, then your romantic notions, within limits, of course, will never be sort of overtaken or countered by shitty actions of these women. And a lot of times I do have to say that it it makes me it's the women's actions here who make me want to be romantic to them. It's when I show up, when I walk into my home with a girl I just came in with a date from, and she puts my slippers in front of me before she even sets the person and fixes the bed and washes any unwashed dishes, before I even open my mouth. It does make you want to, do things not even proactively, almost reactively. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, perfectly. But let me tell you the example I'll give, and this is again from talking to some of our guys that are already there doing this. What happens to so many Westerners that come to a place like the Philippines to meet women is that the women will test them by presenting a problem. I'm short on my rent. I'm this, I'm that. I've got a sick relative. I've got a poor family. I need some money to fix this problem or that problem. And the moment you start giving them money in that way, it's over. They will be a never-ending stream of needs, constantly there trying to get your money. So while on this, the superficially romantic gestures or treatment of women is one thing, but when you put yourself in the role of rescuer in a country like the Philippines or Thailand, you're done for. You're going to end up with no money. You're
Oh,
going to end up with the same problems you had with Western women.
absolutely. And there's plenty of that here. But I do want to
Yeah.
make a case for those wonderful women that I have met that I literally had to reprimand and say, literally, it happened last night. Once again, I started dating this girl, and once again, we're done doing our thing. And I was like, let's go for dinner. And she's like, I already ate. And I'm like, I thought we were going for dinner. She's like, no, it's okay. I'll just go home. And I'm like, well, can I ask why every time you come here like full? Because I want to, she's like, I just really don't want you to spend any money on it, and I don't have money for buying dinner, So I do have to say that they do still exist here where it's absolutely non-transactional, and I have to reprimand them for saying, listen, give me a chance to have a dinner with you. And can I just, I'm not taking you to a five-star restaurant. I'm just taking you to a night market. Can we just have dinner together? Can you please not eat, before that? So this does exist. But to your point, yes, as soon as you hand money over to a woman when she asks for it, no matter where in the world you are, you're done. Is that the message that
Okay.
you're
Yeah,
saying?
and I agree. And in all truth, there is a tiny, tiny fraction of women here in the United States that would fit that bill. But finding them is like, I mean, you're much better off. It's easier to find your passport than it is to find a woman like
That
that.
is a great line. Oh my goodness. That should be tagline. I'm going to change my channel's tagline to that. It's easier to find your passport than a good woman in America. That is so true. Yeah. Now, you know, as we're talking about men who end up having to leave the country, that everything we know, the language and stuff like that, you know, somebody the other day told me like, well, if you send so many men out to these countries, they're going to saturate the market and you're going to kind of lose control over it. And of course there is that. But to what extent do you think someone who's, let's say, 35 years old, has got another 35, at least 45 years to go, moves to a country like Thailand, Philippines, anywhere in South America? What are the chances that these cultures end up changing and get westernized? What then? I ask this every day. I ask this myself every day. What then?
They're already changing,
Yeah,
and because it is already happening. Unfortunately, the feminist virus is a worldwide disease. And there have been cultures like Thailand, like the Philippines, and others that have been resistant to it for a long time, but that is changing. And you got a lot of guys, unfortunately, passport bros who I respect. I mean, I encourage guys to do what you're talking about. I think it's a great option, but it is creating a sort of a flow of simps into these countries, which will change the values eventually. I'd say we're still in a good window for it for the next 10 to 15 years. I think it's still a great option for men to get their passport, go there, check it out, find out about the culture. But I'm betting within 20 years that there's nothing left.
Unfortunately, I agree with you, but then my question still stands. What then? I mean, you can't go any further than Thailand or Philippines. I mean, there is no family values on Mars, right? Or Venus. So where are we going with this?
Well, there's a final option. You mentioned three options. There is actually a fourth option. It's the one that I took up. I decided I was going to pursue not a legal marriage. I'm not legally married, but I'm with the same woman 22 years now. And we have a good relationship. But it was because I just set them up and knocked them down, met one woman after another and rejected them quickly. The moment they showed entitlement, the moment that they showed stuff that I found to be off-putting and feminist and those sort of mentalities, I shut them down one after another until I met a woman that I could work with. And I would say that would be the final option. But look, there's no guarantee. I went through at least 25, 30 women before I met my current partner. And I might have never met her. So there's no guarantee, but I do think that if all else fails, if you can't make it out of your country, or if the Philippines and Thailand and other countries go down the tubes of feminism, the thing you do is start working with what you have. If you want a relationship, you have to find a woman that you can train. And I know it's in delicate language, but that's the truth. You will have to take a woman who's been broken by Western culture and reteach her how to be a responsible, decent adult. And that is a heck of a challenge, but it's doable for some guys if they're strong enough.
And if you don't mind, I'll add one more thing to this recipe, because I've realized it only once I got here and had to go through for a while. What I believe will, if I end up getting married here, what I believe will guard my future wife from being westernized is this. I only date women who don't speak English. You called it the virus. I usually call it the real virus. I believe this virus is spreads by English language. If you understand what Beyonce and Taylor Swift is singing about, then you're going to be infected and there is no vaccine for that. So what I've been doing, and this has been one of the hardest thing I've ever done, learning Thai language, one of the most difficult languages in the world. And I only now go out with Thai women who don't speak any English. And my condition is that they will never learn English. And the difference that I see already between Thai women who speak English, which essentially just more polite American feminists, and women who don't speak English, is that gap that, you know, I've been looking for to breach. So go into the culture, making sure your wife does not ever understand the English language. I feel like that might just be a little cherry on top of what you're suggesting.
I think you've just made a wonderful addition to your newfound tagline too. It's easier to find your passport and learn to speak Thai than it is to have a relationship with a Western woman.
That is true. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit surprised as we were taping this interview, essentially live to tape, that Paul and I actually 100% agree on this. If you do want to have access and have a chance to be in a traditional relationship with a traditional girl, you don't have a choice. You just don't have a choice. You have to leave. And if you want to do that, go to themillionmanproject.com, where I have outlined every single step of the way on what you need to do in order to accomplish that, because trust me, this probably will be one of the best decisions you have ever made for yourself. And of course, go to paulelam.com and subscribe to his YouTube channel, to his newsletter. He's been around for way longer than I have been doing this. And as you can probably tell, he's got some wisdom to drop on all of us. Sex is the only thing that modern women still have to offer to men. And even then, I would say the perks are not worth the time or money. And many men are replacing even that perk with something very different. And instead of me once again talking about this topic, I've decided that the best man to tell us what is going to happen in the future, because this is essentially going to indicate the end of normal human traditional relationships between men and women. So nobody better to tell us about the future rather than someone who really knows the past. And it is the most prominent men's rights activist in America, Paul Elam. As the dating culture, is pretty much done for any, a man who's looking for a traditional relationship with a traditional girl. Same thing in Europe. And as we, talked before, about that, it's not guaranteed that even countries like Thailand, Philippines, and other countries to which some men like myself escape to would actually keep up with. And that leaves very few options for men. And one of the option is essentially to pay for the services, right? And, for now, this will be as a matter of fact, I absolutely 100% think that Department of Labor should reconsider what is the top position occupation for women is. I believe it is a prostitute. If we define prostitute as a female who requires any type of compensation for any type of company or that she provides for men. And I believe after that, it might even get into AI and AI-powered actual humanoid robots. Do you think that this is the only choice for men now, is to abandon the relationships and essentially just hire women who essentially will provide the wifely duties and then move on to, again, AI robots and so forth? And, it's pretty sad, but do you think it's a possibility?
Well, I think there's a distinct possibility that technology could undo the power imbalance between men and women. That once technology gets to what I call the good enough threshold, that if you can recreate a sexual device, a robotic sexual device that can pass in some ways, enough ways, to make it a desirable experience for the user, then you'll really start to see change in the power dynamics, because women have to understand, and I think we all have to understand, that if a woman's only worth, if the only thing she brings to the table for a relationship is sex, then she can be replaced by technology. And I
Or a
think that
professional.
or a professional, yes, absolutely. If that's all you've got, then, there's plenty of replacements. But I think once the technology gets to a place that it's good enough for the one out of two guys, then you'll see a change, and you'll see romance finally die the death it has coming.
Well, I guess I should have asked you this question before I asked my original one, but do you think that sex is all that modern women have to offer in America?
And well, yeah, sex and trouble.
Well,
And I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but we have to recognize, and I try to reach men with this understanding. Guys come to me all the time saying, I married this woman, she destroyed my life, my kids hate me, she's taken my home, she's taken all my money. Look, this is the result of half of marriages. And I think we have to make young men really aware of that. And I think that will change their decision making. Once guys wake up to it, I have guys that write me and say, man, I was about to get married and I stopped, thank God,
but as
because
far
I
as
heard the red pill.
but as far as just the quality of women, right? Because women have become very independent, they got their own careers, they got, their huge egos, they don't cook, they don't clean anymore, it's not part of their thing anymore, right? So would you agree that essentially, if you take even an average American woman, when a man approaches her, when the man is the benefits that any man would see in a modern woman is basically limited to sex?
Well, yeah, and that is, after all, the romantic model is that a woman doesn't really need to provide anything. She just needs to exist. That is the romantic model. Men have to do to be appreciated or loved, even superficially. Men have to perform. Women just have to stand there and look good. That's a sexual thing. Uh, that a sexual allure and beauty that a woman brings to a relationship. Most Western women thinks that's it. That's all I got to bring.
Well,
And as long as men are willing to accept that, then they're going to get what they deserve.
Well, I think if I understand you correctly, you're kind of defining kind of all wifely duties because, one of them obviously it's sex, but, cooking dinner, making sure that the house is clean, making sure that the clothes are laundered, making sure that the kids are behaving themselves and fed and all of that stuff. You
How
can
many
technically,
women do that?
huh? Huh?
How many women do that in the West now?
What that was my question.
Yeah.
I guess I asked
Yeah.
my question wrong. That was my question. Because if my feeling is almost none, and therefore the only thing that men are looking for right now and really can get out of a modern woman is sex, and therefore it's going to be very easy to replace again with either professional or upcoming AI technology.
And it works both ways, sadly, because that guy that all he's expecting is sex, that's the only thing he's decided that he wants because that's all she has to offer. That guy's replaceable too, 1,000 times over by other guys that will line up and accept that deal with a woman. That's the terms. All you have to do is provide me sex, and I'll do everything else in your life. Um, that's what men are lining up to women and saying they'll accept now. So it's like, hey, this is you're getting what you're asking for, guys.
I was the reason I asked the question is because the last CES, which is like an electronics show in Las Vegas, they have started showcasing the early technology, which is actually not that bad. Like of female robots that are specifically designed for companionship and so forth. Because I would argue that a lot of men are not even specifically after sex, they're just lonely and they want some sort of a female attention. And if you have a very realistic beautiful girl who talks to you every day, on video chat, you can't touch her, but it is still maybe more valuable for a man than sex itself, I can argue. So the AI technology is actually not that far away, and it's very realistic. And do you think this can
But
think this?
in terms of having the capacity for the interaction, it's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some physical hardware aspects to making this work perfectly, but the software aspect of this is already there and happening.
One of the series of videos I want to make is take some of my conversations on I only use one dating app anyway, barely, but take some of these conversations with women I'm having and pipe the same conversation into AI, just chat GPT, something very simple, and see who does a better job. I've done it once and it was day and night, and I believe AI is already better of simply having a decent conversation with a man. But I guess my last question, and I don't expect you to cheer me up with your answer, but do you think this could really put in? I mean, you mentioned that this could actually right the ship. Um, but what between righting the ship and completely destroying the relationship and desire between men and women, something that we see in Japan now. what are the chances for the real relationships to survive and, this technology, kind of bring it back rather than completely destroy it?
And I think that I don't have a way to predict that. I think we're in newly charted territory we've never had technology like this available. And the fundamental question being, can technology replace the human connection? And I lean toward believing that it could at some point. But I do think that this remains to be seen. Once you have AI companions out there that are passable for men and that they get emotional a boost or what's the word I'm looking for? An emotional reward for interacting with AI. Again, I think that decommoditizes women's worth and gives men another avenue away from them, whether that wakes women up and they start deciding, well, I have to bring something to the table for men, or whether it just seals the deal and we're done and reproduction in the future will be something also handled by technology. We'll just have to wait and see. But it's going to be an interesting ride.
Now that I'm thinking about, I think I might have an answer, and that's not the one that I wanted to, because we do have actually this already existing here in Thailand. Because when Western women move here, right, they're like, oh, it's really affordable, it's gonna be fun, I'll be by the beach. So there's a few Western move here, and then you would think that they would see how men are being treated by Thai women and how gender role everything is, that they would actually change and say, oh, in order to get a guy, decent guy, I kind of better mimic those Thai women, right? And I got to tell you, and I've tried dating some Western women here, and they don't change. They literally continue being single. You can there are groups on Facebook and Reddit where, this expat women are saying, oh my God, like I came here and I'm invisible to this man, and yet they do absolutely nothing to change. So fortunately, I think we might know the answer to that question.
And I think you may be right, because what we see in Western women now is that they will see their marriages destroyed. They will see the lives of their children disrupted and destroyed simply because they don't want to be accountable to the relationship or to the marriage. That is pretty damning. And I think it paints the picture that fits pretty well with your experience with the Western women in Thailand. They're not changing.
By the way, Elam is indeed male spelled backwards, and it is his real last name. I always thought that was hilarious and honestly really cool. As I think about this topic, I know we will have a lot of updates on this. I already have another video on my channel about the AI technology and robotics that are really catching up to the low bar that modern women have now set as far as what perks they really have to offer. But at the end of the day, there is still oasis of traditional women that still genuinely have way more to offer than just sex. But for that, you absolutely have to leave America or whatever Western country you're in. And if you really want to do that, go to the millionmenproject.com, where I have outlined every single step of the way on how to accomplish this enormous task and a journey that will probably at the end of the day will end up being the best decision you have ever made for yourself. And of course, don't forget to go to paulelam.com and subscribe to his YouTube channel and many other social media platforms that he is on, because if you care about men's rights, if you care about what's happening between men and women in the Western world, you must follow Paul, because he's been around way longer than any of us have, and he's got a lot of wisdom to still give to all of us.